We pretend it's 2 weeks apart. The illusion of podcasting. How have you been over the last 2 weeks, James? Haven't seen you, spoken to you. Been busy or?
Yeah. Well, the Orion supplies are holding out. Still stuck in this heat wave. Yada yada
So
yada.
it sounds very similar to a pod. To it's almost like the same morning.
I mean,
sounds quite similar, really, to a recent episode that we recorded. So little has changed in 2 weeks. Amazing.
Are we not stuck in an endless cycle of just trauma and dismay these days? So I mean,
keep it light.
Who can tell?
People don't come here for that. There's plenty of news podcasts for that.
Oh yeah, right.
Right.
Sorry.
So,
Mr. OK
let's
News
get cracking.
suddenly entered the chat room. Get out of here. How are you doing, my buddy? You've been a busy bee, actually.
Well, hang on a minute. I need to do the intro first.
A little bit of quick news.
Need to do the intro.
Oh right. Okay. Well, surely people are they know where they are by now, but okay.
Some people only tune in for that. Okay, and then they just that's them done.
Right.
So, okay. Welcome back to Tokyo Jazz Joints podcast. It's now episode, always feels unreal to say it, 72 episodes. We've over 140,000 listens to this, what I would say it sometimes borders on the drivel, but which is about 2,000 listens or downloads per episode, which, is kind of mind-blowing. But anyway, so we're going to pick up, James, from where we left off, which is always a good place to pick up from. And as we said in the previous episode, I left you, very sadly, in Nagasaki to take a long trip home by yourself via train. And I headed across Kyushu Island, which, I mean, again, not to flog a dead horse, but when you look at a map, seems really quite a short journey from Nagasaki to the coastal city on the other side of Kyushu Island called Miyazaki, but it's not that close, right?
Well, I mean, to put it in context, because I was riding the Shinkansen, so at an extremely fast speed, I think I was already approaching Kobe. Kobe City, and you were just arriving, in Miyazaki. So it was, again, people who've been to Japan will know, and this applies to all four main islands. They might not be huge in area, but they can be very difficult to get around because it's so mountainous. I think 85% of all Japan is mountains. And so unless you're driving through a recently made tunnel or where the Shinkansen went through the mountains, sometimes the buses and local trains are just going, way, way out of the way to get where you're going. So it can take a very long time. And like you said, you had a 5:30 start. But what time did you actually arrive in Miyazaki Station, downtown Miyazaki?
Well, I actually hadn't said 5:30 start. That was just talking to you at the end of the last podcast, which we didn't record. So for anybody who thinks they're going crazy and had missed something, I had a 5:30 start, which was why I've got a photograph of my bags, this beautiful Moriyama Daido bag, which of course is the other name that I go by. And
you make sure to mention on every episode of the show that you have that.
Yes, bag. Absolutely, yes. But I mean, actually, so I did take the Shinkansen. So I as we've said many times, the transport system in Japan is second to none. And I had the train pass. So I had, I think, something like 4 tickets for these very specific connections. But what I had to do is go back up towards Fukuoka and change and then come down and then across Kyushu. And funny enough, the reason I have a photograph of my bag sitting in the station in Nagasaki at 5:53 in the morning is because the Shinkansen wasn't even open at that point. So the gates opened at 6, I think. And I got on the first train, and then I have myself arriving at my destination, which we'll get to in a moment, at 12:56. So it took somewhere in the region of 6 to 7 hours to get across the island. And if you're really nerdy and you want to have a look, just put that into Google and have a look at the distance between the two. It seems like nothing, but it really took a long time. And I think that was 4 different trains, like all decent, all high speed, except perhaps for the last one. But I was making a beeline for Miyazaki, which I think, and if you go back into the podcast archive, I think in episodes 45 and 46, I think, James, you already talked about some of these places. So you had been to these places while I was in that long imposed absence from Japan due to COVID. And you kind of talked a little about them. So you had scoped them out for me, and you gave me some tips about, how to do it and the order in which to do it. But I was basically making a journey for these 4 places, and I'd never been to that part of Kyushu. I'd never been to Miyazaki, and I was trying to get to Dolphy, Downbeat, which were in a town called Takabe, with just a little bit up the coast from Miyazaki, and then coming back to Miyazaki for the evening for 2 places called Lifetime and Far Cry. So I was essentially making that journey over there for these 4 places. And again, it was quite tight because there's this constant Tetris of, this place is open in the daytime, but it's not open at night.
Yeah.
You kind of wanted to get it right.
And to give just a little more of the setting, we as I mentioned on those early episodes, 45, 46, Miyazaki, just to let listeners know, so Kyushu is not only the southernmost main island, Miyazaki is on the southeast coast and the Pacific coast, quite far from the major cities. All the major cities of Kyushu are on the other side of the island: Fukuoka, Nagasaki, Kumamoto. So it's extremely hard to get to. Most famous for tropical fruit and their golf tournaments and their rather impenetrable accent. And very, very much, Philip, because you went in February. I went a little bit later. I went right at the end of March, beginning of April, but it was already warm, very, very humid. And I remember, because I flew down there, we were coming in the airport, and it was just this like endless row of palm trees. It had a very alien type of feeling to me, you know what I mean? Because it was just like, wow, where is this, So it makes sense that it took you so long to get there.
So it's day 6 for me. First day of the solo tour. Bit sad, only needed 1 microphone. James is on his way back to Tokyo. Sat beside a man with some dried squid and chuhai. I got my first train 6:17, and this is the 4th change for the final destination, which is Takanabe. Somewhere that James has already been and talked about on the previous episode, so I'm going to see these places. And it's all a bit tight. The master is making curry from 11 to 2, so we give a call ahead to get permission to come round, and then there's another place hopefully called Downbeat, which closes at 4, after which I'll return to where I'm standing now. Well, not exactly where I'm standing now because it's just a platform, but I'm in Miyazaki. There's some palm trees. You would not think it was February, and hopefully 2 more places tonight, so fingers crossed I get to all 4 joints today. Sorry, that was me just wiping my tears.
Yeah, the order that we visited all these places was very different. But so you got into Miyazaki City. How did you get to Takabe? Okay, first of all, we have to say this, Philip. Takabe City in quotation marks. For bureaucratic and political reasons in Japan, many locations are designated as cities. What exactly did you find when you got to Takabe City's main train station? Because it was, again, it was a warm, it was February, it was unseasonably warm. I had that beautiful Lazy Oaf cardigan, which I know you're very taken with, but I did not need it, and I also had a jacket, and it was completely redundant, to be honest. So I got to Miyazaki and did a very quick bag dump, which again, another fantastic feature of travel in Japan, where you can go to any station often and dump your bags in a locker. So I threw those bags in and lightened the load a little bit, and then I headed straight up to, actually I'm lying, on this occasion I didn't do that. I'll tell you why I remember that I didn't in the meantime. But anyway, I got to Miyazaki station I've got 12:16 here, so it was around midday, and I jumped on this local train up to Takabe. Well, city. I'm just looking. So I'm looking at the station forecourt, and the
there is literally not one car visible in this picture. There's a huge kind of station area, like a kind of, they call them rotaries, where the buses and cars can come in and drop people and pick people up. There's no, absolutely no people or traffic anywhere in this photograph. And this was a real retro move, because I had a phone which gave me access to internet and Google Maps and all these things, but does not function as a local number. So I thought, well, I'll jump in a taxi, because Dolphy, again, one of those places, was a little bit, it was kind of out on a kind of like an industrial estate, a little bit on the edge of Takabe City. And I had to use one of those green payphones that I remember. And it's funny, I've been watching that Tokyo Vice recently, and watching him calling America from those phones. And actually, I remember, I mean, the one that I'm looking at now, it does have a phone card slot, which was a kind of an innovation at the time, but you can still put in a 10 yen or 100 yen coin. But I didn't have any coins, I don't think, either. So I remember sort of going back into the station and saying, is there somewhere I can get a taxi? And they just pointed me out, and I found these 3 numbers. Now, on this occasion, actually, someone very kindly, I think it was here, someone very kindly called it for me. Someone had a mobile, like a local, and they called me this taxi, which came pretty promptly and took me a very short drive out to the first place, which was Dolphy. Now, I, for some reason in my head, because of the way you told the story, and because it was on this coast, and because of my rather poor Japanese geography, I sort of always imagined this place kind of being almost like a beachfront type kisa, but no, it's very much not that, right? Because it's owned by a lovely, lovely guy. He opened it I think in 1993, but what's really distinctive about it is not the Dolphy name, because we know that's come up quite a few times, but the shutter, right? He has this shutter, which, like a metal shop shutter, which he pulls down, and the entire shutter is covered with the cover of Eric Dolphy's Out to Lunch album. Now, he told me, I don't know if he mentioned when you met him, but he spent 200,000 yen on that sticker.
Yes.
To get that sticker put on the shutter.
It's incredible. It is. Yeah, Philip, it's one of the pictures I have pinned on my Instagram feed, and I think it's got the most response ever. Yeah, maybe I should go off solo. Actually, why do I need you to take the pictures?
Well, I mean, it's a good question.
No, that shutter was, and the picture I happened. It was just really great because, as you said, he's a real sweet dude. He had an amazingly warm smile in that photo. It's one of my favorites that I've ever taken in all of my jazz experiences. And yeah, it's Takanabe, not exactly the most.
No, Takabe.
Takabe. And he, no, Takanabe.
Oh, no, it is Takanabe.
Yes.
I thought it was Takabe.
No, it's Takanabe, yes. He told me that, because you said it's, well, I wouldn't say an industrial estate, but it isn't actually far from the coast. It's only a couple kilometers inland, but it is very, very spread out. It's on the edge of the hills. And I asked, the first thing I did ask him was just like, look, I don't understand. Like, it seems this little like building complex with alleyways. How do you have all these bars here? There's nothing around here. And he said, oh, no, not far from here is a self-defense forces base, the Japanese army. And also there's a huge cannon camera factory, which employs 1,500 people. So who live maybe sometimes in a company dorm or spread around. So there is like there's a base of workers basically that supports having that many bars in seemingly the middle of nowhere. And, just extrapolate out of that. 5% of those people are jazz fans. There you go. Dolphy is in business for 30 years. Yeah, he opened in 1993. And he also,
yeah, but like,
did you get in time for, maybe you were going to get into that, but remember we had a lot of trouble setting up your visit because of the opening hours. And I had told you he is there at lunchtime, but only for a couple hours because he cooks up curry and sells curry lunches to people.
Yeah, well, so he was expecting me, but it was one of those it was very much like a Ishizaki-san from Pithecanthropus erectus kind of, it's not like you're expecting a welcome, but you're in your head you start questioning, like, he does realize that, like, I'm the guy that has been calling, or this is not
Right.
like you're just never quite sure. And of course, often it's just shyness, right? But so I got there with my bags actually, because I didn't have time to dump them, so I had all these bags, my camera as well, and he was open, and there was a guy, like real, like salt of the earth work guy, in the Japanese work gear, with the white towel around his neck, having a curry lunch, and totally unfazed. He's, what is it you're doing? And are you photographer? Where are you from? And all this. And then also weirdly, the deputy mayor was there.
Oh,
so he of Takanabe, and he spoke English quite well. So he was kind of speaking to me in English to say, welcome to Takanabe, and what are you doing? And we sort of had this kind of conversation, and then both of them cleared off. So then it was one of those ones where, I and this is probably completely self-imposed. You feel like, I'm really kind of Jama, and I'm kind of getting in the way here, and making him stay open. But I mean, of course, in reality, he's probably quite chuffed that you're here. And he continued to talk, and then he started to play some records, and he said to me, what do you want to listen to? And I said, well, look, I'm sorry, I know this is like very corny, but I've got to hear Out to Lunch, because and so I have a lovely photograph of him putting on Out to Lunch, and then pointing out different bits and pieces. But I mean, it's probably worth stating, like Dolphy, this Dolphy is big. I mean, it's a big place, right? So you go in, there's the bar counter, there's a fairly wide kind of area to walk down, and then there's a whole seating area, and then it kind of curls around the back as well, where there's a lot of books and records, and the bathroom, and right along the wall in the seating area is a fantastic collection of guitars, right?
Well, okay, yeah, I've got in my notes here 60 plus max for when he's got a little live gig. So that's quite larger than the average place that we visit. He has, Philip, you're really bearing the lead. Not only does he have all those guitars, on the front, when you walk in on the right side of the wall, he has a huge collection of toys. Don't you remember? Little car figurines and whatnot. I mean, like hundreds and hundreds of them, Plus, he's got a massive collection of Scottish whiskey, single malts. And, next to the very famous mural in the front that we mentioned, the small sign that's actually on the ground says like jazz and Scotch whiskey bar, which really stands out, because they don't normally emphasize that. So he had a lot of single malts there that I asked him, how did you even get these? And he was like, there's a distributor in Kagoshima, the bigger city, blah 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 blah. But he has whiskey.
Do you remember that?
It'd be very hard to find.
Well, it's funny because, again, this is something that he talked about, because he pointed up at these whiskeys, and there was one he pointed out, like there was probably a shot left in it, and he said, that's probably, like, sometimes people come and will buy the bottle off me. And there was one particular one he pointed to, it was something like 130,000 yen or something. It was only a shot left, right? So people, to me, that kind of speaks of days gone by, when money was a different thing. I mean, 200,000 yen on that sticker in 1993, like that was, 30 years ago, 200,000 yen was a lot more money than it is now. I mean, there was also guns, right? I don't know if you remember the guns up on the wall as well, right?
That rural feeling, and also, like you mentioned, that kind of out of time feeling, because he was another charter member of the I don't have a cell phone, I'm analog club, which includes our friend Mokuba and quite a few other guys, right? So you can only reach him on the phone in his shop. He doesn't use email. He doesn't have a smartphone. He pulled out, I don't know if you had time for that. He pulled out, because I asked him, I was like, look, I don't even see anything online about you on like Jazz Navi or anything. He's like, no, this is my blog. And he pulled out a scrapbook of photos, and he started showing me photos not only of like the bar and the jazz, including the art ensemble of Chicago who went there. Unfreaking believable, right? But then he spent a good 10 minutes talking about all the fishing that he and his friends do. Did he get into that with you as well?
Yeah, you see, you had warned me about that, and you were like, he likes to talk. And I was so confused, because when I got there, I was like, he's not that talkative, really. And I was a bit confused. But then when I remembered what you'd said, I was quite glad, because he started showing, he showed me a few family photographs. And to my detriment, I haven't written this down, but he did tell me a story. I think it was about his brother-in-law having died of cancer. Because I was basically asking him, what is business like how? And, it was very much like, I'm not going to be able to keep going much longer. Like that was, and this is how the talk about the whiskey came in, and this kind of thing. And it was really quite sad. And I just thought, it's sort of, it's one of those places that, spoke to a different time in terms of, maybe deindustrialization, this kind of like the dying off of these, rural areas and these kind of these cottage industries, and just that thing that we see, this huge like urban drift in Japan. And, he's an older guy, like it's unlikely that's going to be taken over. But what's kind of bizarre is, I mean, probably the value of the things in that place is enormous, because he has all those guitars, he has all the audio equipment, all the collectibles, all the records. And so if he does close, like I hope at least he can take what's there and turn that into some kind of monetary value, because not even just
not even just the jazz. He showed me a couple. He said he had 9 of them. He's got 9 different versions of "Let It Be" by the Beatles, because there's so many different versions that came out, whether it's US, UK, Japan. B-sides, wrong covers, etc. And just like with the jazz that we've talked about, I think a lot of our listeners probably know this, is that, rock collectors in Japan can be just as obsessive, and Beatle collectors are notorious for being insane for the amount of versions of the same album that they will buy and that you can find in Japan. I mean, I met one guy who had 17 copies of Sgt. Pepper's, all with slight differences to them. So he's got all of that too up on the shelf as well. He actually went on quite a bit when we met about his rock collection too, which was interesting, because you wouldn't normally expect that the guy who names the bar Dolphy, that tends to be a guy who's listening only to jazz and only that kind of jazz, not really an all genre kind of thing. But he had a lot of the rock records too.
Well, actually, that reminds me. So when he was pushing this flyer heavily to me, which actually was some kind of Irish thing. It was some kind of Irish traditional gig that was coming up. It was someone Japanese, but I mean, there is quite a healthy scene in Japan of
Did you tell him
Japanese musicians.
Had you told him you were from Ireland, or was that just?
I think it must have been connected to that. Okay, but anyway, he was pushing this thing. So obviously, it's not frozen in time. Like there's a bit of diversification there, maybe. Is it Roscoe Mitchell? Is that the sax player from
yes.
Art Ensemble Chicago?
Yes.
Right. So I think it was specifically him that had come, because again, as with so many of these owners, there's often like like we talked about Sonny Rollins in the last episode, and there's often like a pivotal moment or this kind of meeting that and there's a picture actually. So I don't know if you remember, but when you turn around the corner to go towards the toilet, the corridor that leads you down to the bathroom, on the left-hand side of the wall, he's got this again. There's about 5 or 6 little shelves, so that just a little piece of wood with a little lip on it, and all the photographs are of gigs that have happened in Dolphy. And then these photographs are they're encased in this plastic cover, almost looks like a CD type cover, but like a different shape. And you can see there's one of him in a Dolphy apron playing a clarinet.
Oh, gosh,
with Roscoe Mitchell from Art Ensemble Chicago.
I got to go back to the photos. I don't remember that. Yeah.
I'll send you it now. You can have a look. But I mean, you wonder, right? What on earth? Like, why was he there?
Yeah. I mean, like how? I mean, yeah.
Like, why?
It's inexplicable. I mean, if you look on the map where Takanabe actually is, and then it's just like, wow. Even Miyazaki is a stretch, but okay, look, it's a regional big city. They've got a couple jazz clubs. You're on tour in Japan. Okay, I get that, and we'll get in a little bit to more. With
it's also a popular tour. Like it's a very touristy place, right?
Yeah,
like it's a tourist spot,
and
right?
also like just like Roscoe Mitchell, the art ensemble. Like how? I mean, what? Like it's just another one of those just inexplicable things. Just amazing. I could have hung out with that guy all day because, yeah, like, I wonder, well, 2 years had gone by. I mean, who really knows? When I met him, he was it sounds like he was a lot more gregarious and chatty than maybe he was with you. Maybe he was tired, or maybe the couple of years had worn on him, and lack of business. I wonder about that because he was very, very chatty with me, and I ended up almost missing Actually, I missed the first train back, and I had to get a taxi to get the next one because I just wanted to spend more time with them. Because when am I going to get back?
Yeah,
there?
I mean, he warmed up definitely, but yeah, I just remember coming away. I mean, it's also maybe the location of the place as well. Like it was one of those kind of days where the sun was out. There's no greenery anywhere. You kind of feel that heat, and it's just a lot of concrete and buildings, and it's in this weird kind of a state, like but industrial estate bit. But then this Mbiru that exists. I mean, the taxi driver had an awful time trying to find it as well. Like there was a lot of back and forward with the office trying to find this place, but it's in a building, which again, incredibly in that area is obviously like where people go at night to unwind. And there's maybe, I don't know, 12 or 14 different places like karaoke
even more, yeah. And it is
and
like,
stuff,
like you said, it's so bizarre because it is, yeah. It's got that kind of low elevation concrete, and yet Takanabe City itself is surrounded by on the east side the entire coastline. And just a little bit past Dolphy, you get to the mountains where there's a gigantic national park, an old shrine, a couple onsens. And it's very much that sort of Japanese sort of like urban planning thing. It's like, we're surrounded by this beautiful nature. Let's make the city as drab and unappealing as possible. We've seen it around the entire country. And, we don't need to go into, remember the famous, the famous pork barrel politics comment of many episodes back, but I mean, yeah,
belly politics,
the pork belly politics. There we go. Yes, pork barrel is actually great. But again, look, it is something you see when you go all around Japan, and these cities they look very identical in a lot of ways because of these issues, and you have to you slowly have to let the local culture and the differences sort of seep in. And then with Miyazaki and a place like Takanabe, it did that when he started showing me the pictures of like him and his crew of boys, how they would go fishing, and then they would come back and grill the fish up on a barbecue right outside the shop at Dolphy where you would see the shutter. These kinds of stories that would come out, and you'd be like, oh yeah, okay, now I'm getting it. I am in a different place, in a very local place that has a distinct culture. And I mean, it was sadly too short of a visit. I think I spent 90 minutes there. I would wish I could have spent the whole day. And maybe even hung out with some of the regulars who come to drink there, because you can't imagine he gets a lot of first timers, right? I mean, again,
No, I would say not. And you're so kind of hampered by trains and the thing. Like, I had to take that taxi, and then I was also conscious that, like you said, and when you first went there, it's the sort of place where there's like a local train every hour or more if you're lucky. So you have to kind of think ahead and be like, okay, well, I want to stay here. I don't want to just run in and say hi and take some photos and leave. But you want to stay a respectable amount of time and chat and not feel like you're parachuting in and out. But also you're conscious that if you don't make it back to the station, that you're going to be sitting at a station where there is literally nothing for quite a long time. Although I say literally nothing, there's actually, bizarrely, there was a grand piano set up in the station just for people to play, but we'll come to that in a minute. But I don't know if you remember the toilet. Do you remember the interior decoration in the bathroom? Quite distinctive.
Strangely not, and I'm wondering, for me, that's unusual. Why would
Too busy looking down, probably.
Why would I... Why would I have not? Oh dear.
Well, if you'd looked up, you'd have got a surprise. I mean, again, talking of a time gone past. I mean, in the bathroom, rather bizarrely, actually, but there is along the top of the wall there is the a poster, actually, I think, that came with a Queen single, and I'm sure Queen fans will correct me. It's either Bicycle Race, I presume, It must be Bicycle Race. I was going to say possibly Fat Bottom Girls, but it's one of those two tracks, and it's a poster of a lot of women from the 70s, naked, riding bikes. And then next to that is the original Electric Ladyland cover, folded out, which also features a bevy of naked women. And then next to that, the very problematic cover of the original cover of the Blind Faith album. I don't know if you know the cover I'm talking about.
Yes, I do. Yes.
And that's the decoration in the bathroom, which, again, sort of does speak to a different time, and as much as
obviously he's got his classic rock on in More Ways Than One. Did not remember that. Yeah, but that does it does make sense then with all the Beatle albums and whatnot. And again, a guy. Actually, he's a little. I have him down at 61, so he'd be 63 now. So he was born when then in 1960. No, I guess that makes sense. He would have grown up in the early 70s as a classic rock fan. Yeah, no, that makes sense based on a lot of the guys that I've met here of that generation. That music is right in their wheelhouse. So yeah, I mean, you could easily imagine him picking up all of that original vinyl back at the time before he became a big jazz head. Yeah.
I mean, not to stereotype it. I mean, certainly the guy that was having his curry lunch, not the deputy mayor, but it could be, to suit the tastes of customers, or certainly customers past. It feels like out there would be a particularly, probably quite a male, kind of space, I guess, or quite a male environment, shall we say? Looking just at a list of some of the other places that you can go in the evening in and around Dolphy. I imagine, it's very much a nightlife area designed for working men, or certainly working men as customers. So yeah, I mean, that probably explains that a little bit, but lovely guy. And again, Philip, just a little nod.
I do have the pictures. Just going back through my phone archive, and it's not the ones on the wall that you mentioned. I took a few snaps of his scrapbook, and I think the one that you were asking about is not George Adams. It's actually Joseph Jarman. If it's Joseph Jarman, that means the art ensemble the whole group was there. It wasn't just Roscoe.
No, because that one's up at the front. That's from that Live Under the Sky thing. So that may be why Roscoe Mitchell was there.
Oh, okay.
So that's not in Dolphy. That's that Live Under the Sky thing that we've seen a lot, which I think is 86 or 88. So it could be that would explain certainly why. Well, he might have been in Japan at the same time and somehow ended up there. But
okay. Yeah, okay. Either way, he had a kick-ass record collection, man. I mean, I'm going back to, I hadn't checked the photos before we started recording. I forgot. I took a lot of them. Yeah, he had a really deep collection, jazz and rock. So,
so they all were there.
Yeah.
Though. You just sent me a picture with.
Yeah.
Oh, so they all came to Dolphy, which is even more bizarre, right? I mean,
madness, total madness.
Well, you know what? It's funny. Even just looking at that picture you sent me of him, like it's definitely like I just came away feeling so sad. Like he was lovely, but there was just a real melancholy about the place, and it was someone who he just said, like, business is not good, and I don't know how long it's going to last, and like it was just so, a real.
It's so rough because it's only 2 years in between me visiting and not, but looking back on the pictures now and all my notes. Multiple times I've got little smiley faces. Every picture of him, he was smiling, he was laughing at himself. Remember when I said, like, he's like, oh, I'm analog, I don't, you know what I mean? Like he was just a joy to be around. And I'm wondering, again, as you mentioned, the depopulation of all of rural Japan, post-COVID, towns like this being depressed, it just might make it that he realizes that he can't keep it open much longer. I'll keep an ear out, because you do see people, the usual crew that I follow on places like Twitter, Japanese jazz geeks like us, they do update things like when they're traveling, and we're actually going to get into that a little bit later in this episode with an update. But I would just say in sum, Philip, Dolphy in Miyazaki was one of my most special solo visits, and I was so happy that you could get there. I wish we could have gone together, because it's just everything about it, like you said, the location, him, the shutter, the records, all the cluttery things, just an all-time jazz joint.
Yeah, absolutely. And funny enough, just looking at the pictures of the exterior, I've got one of him pulling down the shutter, and I think actually he did pull it down for a photo, but also I think he pulled it down because he did close up and very kindly offered me a lift to the next place that I was going, which incredibly was also in the same city of Takanabe. But, not something you would necessarily associate with where the Dolphy is located. But again, you kind of forget that Miyazaki, you mentioned, is almost got that tropical feel. And of course, he has this huge longboard above the shop advertising the curry set for lunch. So again, just a reminder that you're kind of in this almost like subtropical kind of surfer place. Now, not Takanabe City in and of itself, but certainly you're very close to that coast. On that surfboard, I don't know if you remember, but there's the little alligator cartoon that was from one of the Hampton Hawes albums, and bizarrely, he's also then, and I know this because he gave me a lift in the car, which I have to say is one of the messiest cars I've ever been in. Like, I was like, I do not know where, and I had 3 bags. I was like, where am I going? Like, it was one of those cars where you can only sit in the driver's seat, right? So I had to sort of push stuff away, which is not, it's not how you think of like cars in Japan at all, right? But I had to push stuff out of the way, and sit in the passenger seat with my 3 bags. Now, it was only around the corner, but again, he was like, oh, it's a bit too far to walk. And then, of course, you get in the car and you're there for like a minute or two and you're at the next place. But do you remember, he's actually painted that same Hampton Hawes crocodile on the side of the car. It's painted on his car, by hand.
Well, remember, I did the whole Miyazaki itinerary that you did, I did in reverse. Okay, so Dolphy was the last place that I went to, and then so it was already evening, and he was opening up for the bar. And as I left, there was a customer actually coming in, so I had to go by taxi. I did not see it, but that's epic.
It's wild, right? Who fits that on their car?
Oh, that's great. That is great. Yeah, I have to.
Anyway. So, I mean, chalk and cheese, right? If you talk about contrast, so from Dolphy, the owner took me around a corner. I mean, it literally must have been 2 minutes. Let me just see, actually. But yeah, and again, there was that sort of thing. Yeah, it was 2 minutes. There was that thing of, there was no sense of like, oh, I'll pop in and say hello or anything, even though we're both jazz joint owners within 2 minutes drive of each other. He just was like, well, look, thanks for coming. Out I got with my bags, and in I went to again, probably one of the not so originally named places. Like, we've been to many of these already, but this is the Cafe Downbeat, which couldn't be more different, right? It's in an individual house. It's got this, it's painted kind of deep green. It's got flowers and trees all around it. There's brass instrument. I don't know. I don't want to embarrass myself. Is that like a tuba or no? It's not a tuba. It's something else.
I think it looks, from my photo, it looks like a small tuba or a French one. No, it's not a French one. Yeah, I think it's a tuba.
Maybe. Anyway,
Philip,
it's got this beautiful awning as well, right?
Great, yes. I love my awnings, and not only does it say Cafe Downbeat on it, it says coffee time is jazz time in English.
Don't we know it?
And also the very curious decision to have that sort of like lamppost with Western style like street signs, one of which says Bourbon Street and the other says Jazz City, and then in Japanese says like Jazz Kisa Downbeat Showa Retro Namise, like, so a Showa era retro shop.
Yeah, it's got that feel of like it's one of those buildings or one of those houses that wouldn't look out of place up in the bluff in Yokohama, like. It's got that sort of feel.
It's even got the white picket fence. So, for me, immediately as an American, before even walking in, I'm like, oh, okay, well, this guy's obviously got his American thing going on, right? With the way this house looks and that lamppost and the white picket fence. And sure enough, when we went in, I don't know how much you had a chance to chat with him, but, he was...
Oh, a lot.
Oh, okay. So he, you must have heard then. So he's an ex-Air Force guy, lived in the U.S. and absolutely adores America. He was there for a long time. His English was great. And
he spoke great English. But like when I arrived, it was it's weird because it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and obviously, as you can see from the photos on Instagram, it was bright and sunny outside, and then you go in there and it's completely dark and so chilled. And there was one guy sat at the bar who, I don't know if he was on his lunch or he'd finished work early. Like, he was wearing like kind of these kind of ubiquitous work type outfits that a lot of people wear when they work for different Japanese not like blue collar type jobs, not an office job. And it was just so, I mean, he's got this kind of poured concrete countertop. It's absolutely beautiful inside. It's all kind of green, dark green wood. It's all painted. He's got blinds on all the windows. So it's got this really, like, you don't get much sun in it. It's very, very chilled place. And it was just this guy and the owner who, as you said, was lovely guy, spoke amazing English. And I think most strikingly was wearing a Snoopy and Friends jazz sweatshirt when I went in. So again, just one of those weird,
sweet.
like,
Nice.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just such a like an odd thing to be wearing, right? But he was just lovely. And what they had on at the time when I went in, I mean, they've got this beautiful sound system. I don't know if you remember, just around the corner, there's a table just behind the speakers of the booth, and they have this huge Stars and Stripes up on the wall.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
No, I don't. I'm looking through my pictures, and I don't think I took one of that because I probably would have been just very.
Yeah, you would have been offended.
Well, yeah, but I was more intrigued, like you said, with the
lost your words.
The concrete counter, but also like his wife brought me out a cake set that was amazing, and as
I had cake, yeah.
As I devoured it, and I've got a great picture here, and I'm sure you got one. I looked down at the plate. The plate is like a handmade, like it's like pottery, and it's got downbeat sort of in it, like engraved in it. And every plate was made individually, and I think that's all the doings of his wife, that she does this. I don't know. Kyushu as a whole is quite famous for pottery. Maybe that's just a coincidence, though. But like, Kyushu is well known for its like handicrafts and pottery tradition. But in any case, like, the mugs and the plates were all like individually made like that, and the plates stayed downbeat. That was just like super, super cool. And I have in the notes here, it says he was an engineer working on F-15 fighter planes. I don't know whether designing or whatever. But then right under that is, by the way, did you know Art Pepper and Mal Waldron both played in Takanabe City? I forgot these notes, Philip. What? Mal Waldron, my hero, played in Takanabe. So this dude actually saw him. So yeah, see, the story makes more sense now. He was based in the States for many years, but the shop has actually been open since the 80s. And it was his wife's family who were running it as a regular coffee shop, and then she took it over, and then he sort of like transitioned it into jazz. So the actual structure has been there quite longer. But it, as downbeat as you see it now, I'm not sure how many years. I didn't get it written down, but
well, he told me 1981.
Yeah,
so that may be the cafe.
I've got 1981 written here, but there's no way he could have been running it since then if he was in the
No,
States
I think his wife ran it, because what I've got here is he spent 39 years in the self-defense force. So it wasn't the US Air Force, but obviously there would have been a lot of back and forward and communication between those two. So that's where the English thing came from. And then he actually spent, when he retired from that, he worked for 10 years in Haneda.
Okay,
airport,
like, oh, right.
Well, not in the airport, but obviously to do with airlines and things. And then I've also got that he lived for 5 years in Shimokitazawa, which was obviously my old neighborhood, and he knew the old Masako. So we got as far as that.
Because that's great, because I have down here, he knows Yoshihisa-san, our good friend at Downbeat, because his daughter lives in Yokohama. Because I told him, I said, not only do I live in Yokohama, but I'm a joden at the Yokohama Downbeat. And he's like, oh yeah, I know Yoshihisa-san, my daughter lives there. I've been there several times. And I was just like, what? Like, okay. So amazing. So many different connections there. But he was a really, really sweet dude. I mean, I think I might have mentioned in the earlier episodes. I have to go back and listen, but I did get a good 15 minutes about how amazing American highways are. And Philip, you know that, like, not only do I not care about highways, I don't even drive. So like, it was so far beyond beyond me what he was describing about highway construction as an engineer was a bit like listening to my father. It was also an engineer.
Yeah, I mean,
but
we didn't really get into.
Yeah.
We didn't really get into US infrastructure actually because it's one of those times when I felt like it's such a bumbling foreigner because I arrived, it was obviously very quiet, very mellow, and then I was sort of like, a bit flustered, and I had all these bloody bags with me still, right? So I was like sort of like stumbling in, being like, trying to find somewhere to sit. But what was interesting for me was, and I wrote something recently about this actually, because when I came in initially, they have a huge flat screen TV between the speakers, and him and this guy who's sitting at the counter, who, again, incredibly, like, didn't even acknowledge me. Like when I came in, he just was so engrossed in what they were watching and listening to. And they were watching the Osaka Jazz channel and playing all these different tracks and like looking up different stuff, and then sort of sitting like kind of like commenting on them and like nodding. And then he started to talk to me for a bit. And he asked me then, what kind of stuff that I listened to. And when I mentioned Coltrane, he was like, oh, okay, then. So then the TV went off. And this, James, and I wrote something about this recently because it's the first time, and I suspect possibly the only time, certainly in an older place, that you're ever likely to, because we talk a lot about the analog culture. You just spoke about the previous owner in Dolphy didn't even have a mobile phone. And without missing a beat, this guy, this very cool owner, was just like, he just popped the telly off, and next thing he just said, I'll never forget that, he just said, Alexa, please play John Coltrane.
Oh my God. Whoa.
And ballads.
Wow.
And the ballads album just started playing.
Wow.
Through. So he didn't switch the TV off. He switched off the YouTube app, and ballads appeared on the television and started playing through the speaker system. And I just was like so blown away, and I was like, I can't wait to tell, because we talk so much about the analog thing, and I just wonder, even if a lot of owners now wanted to even go down that route. I mean, we talked about some that did make the transition to CDs, and of course they're very au fait with audio stuff, but it just seemed to me like now I know somewhere like Uncle Tom now, which we'll also talk about in a future episode, has this kind of Spotify playlist that seems to be displayed on a small TV screen in Uncle Tom, but I've never seen anything quite, and it was so slick. I mean, it was just like, Alexa, play John Coltrane, and then up came the options, and he went for ballads, and on it went, and it was just seamless. It was such a bizarre and surreal experience in a jazz key set.
I would not have been pleased with that. As you know, I'm not a fan of Alexa, but yeah, wow. I didn't expect that at all, because the pictures I have of Downbeat and then all the notes was very much about like, the live music and him being a jazz fan, him playing, I don't know if he told you, like he plays the sax. That's why he's got a few saxophones around the shop.
Yeah.
But that he plays in an oldies band. And
right.
And he was like, well, first of all, to play jazz well is really difficult. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, also, like, you get a lot fewer people coming to see you, but if you play oldies, older people my age love to come and hear it. And I was like, okay, that makes sense as a semi-pro musician. But yeah, he was a great guy. It's really funny because, like you said, I walked from Dolphy to Downbeat. I don't remember how long it took, but I didn't think it was necessary to get a ride. I think it maybe took me 15 minutes.
No, it wasn't. It was so he was just being nice, because like I said, it was less than 2 minutes, like between leaving Dolphy, photographing his car, and being in Downbeat was less than 2 minutes. So it was just a courtesy thing around the corner.
There was no, you're right though. There didn't seem to be a relationship between those two guys, even though they were similar.
Which we've seen before, right? With something like, we talked about Royce and Basie, being in the same town, and it's not uncommon, right?
Yeah, Johnny's and other places, yeah, for sure.
I don't know if you see there, I've sent you another photo, but and I'll post this on Instagram as well, but it's confirmation. It definitely was opened in 81 as a jazz place. You can see there's a huge Saxophone Colossus poster up. There's that a different version of the American flag there that I'm talking about. It seems to be, that looks like Sadao Watanabe, a picture of him in the behind the counter, and it was opened in 81 as a jazz place.
Oh wow, okay, that's That's
That's
really
actually out in just in
Yeah.
the entrance hall, but between the inner and the outer door, that was hung up on the wall. That's why I photographed it on the way
Yeah, you're
home.
right. You're right. That does look like Watanabe. That's clearly sunny again. Yeah. Oh, wow. Interesting. So, yeah, I'm wondering why. It's strange because I definitely remember him saying like, when he was sent overseas, and in those days it would have been the usual way, especially for Japanese companies, or well, in this case, the Japanese military. You don't bring your family. You don't bring your wife and kids. You just go alone. And so I guess his wife and family, or her family, were still running the place. Yeah, that's a little curious. I'll have to ask him because he still comes up to Yokohama to visit his daughter here and goes to our Downbeat.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah. He says that because she came up for work and kind of, I guess, settled in the Kanto area. And so they do come up to visit her, and I was like, oh look, if you ever come up, let me know. I would love to just meet you over at Downbeat in Noge, So because I'm quite intrigued now by the history of the joint.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting. I mean, I don't know, maybe, but then presumably they didn't live apart. So I mean, maybe it was her family, or maybe it was run by a father. Or
In those days, if you were sent overseas for a Japanese company in the army, it would be even more conservative. Probably, there's no question your wife's not going. There's no way. I mean, a whole generation of Japanese workers lived apart from their families. It was just normal.
Even in the military. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, think about it because
Sorry, the self-defense forces must be clear on that. It's not.
Yeah,
Definitely not an army.
But remember,
Definitely not an army.
Unlike with like the U.S. soldiers who come here, where there's a base and there's schools and there's housing, he was sort of sent as like a special, like like an advisory team or whatever, as like an engineering team. So it wasn't like a Japanese base or anywhere to even live. So he would definitely have been sent alone. There's no way he would have brought his family. So. And it doesn't. From what he told me, it sounded like he really loved it driving down the highways from Denver. He told me he drove from Denver to Los Angeles and deliberately took it really slow so he could enjoy the highways and the landscape. And I was like, well, this dude really likes the U.S., man. I expected him to start singing Route 66 or something. But, gosh, that was funny.
Wow. Anyway, absolute gem of a guy, and one of those kind of really cool, like I don't know, like how would you like just one of those cool guys. It's like everything seems kind of like effortless, like he's just like, oh yeah, I was just in the Air Force, and then like, oh, then I just worked at Haneda, and like just I don't know, like there's a particular type. I don't know how to really explain what I mean, but like he just seemed, just a really cool guy, really sort of down to earth, just very friendly, and just running this really kind of chic like place, really stylish, very cool, the way it was designed and done inside. And then just that contrast with this quite garish Snoopy sweatshirt, which I just absolutely loved, and like this beautiful bunch of freshly cut flowers on the counter as well. It just had, I don't know, just one of those places, but again, ultimately in quite a random,
that's the kind of
quite a bizarre place.
That's the kind of sweater that they sell in the old man clothes shops in my neighborhood on the Shotengai. So I will keep a lookout for one and definitely buy it for you next time I see one.
Might be time to take the plunge. Well, look, that was Takanabe, and I got him to call me a man in white gloves who drove me home in a taxi to the station. And as I said, again, you do get some random things in Japan. There was really nothing in the station, like, to the point of barely a vending machine type thing. Certainly no ticket.
Philip, I think I must have told you in the previous episodes, 45, 46, when I got back to the station, and because I missed the first train and then I missed time the second one, so I had a good 30 minutes. And there was nobody in there, and there was no convenience store. There was nothing. It was literally nothing. There wasn't even a guard. And I was just like, this place is nuts. Like, how can there be no?
Yeah, that's what I mean. There wasn't. Yeah, there wasn't even a guard. Yeah. There's just nothing. I mean, it was such a. Anyway, so look, I got back to the station anyway. I unfortunately, much to my eternal regret, did not listen to my parents, did not learn how to play the piano, even though they told me I would be sorry. And there would have been nothing lovelier than to sit in Takanabe Station waiting for my local train back to Miyazaki and playing that piano in this sort of strange concrete floored room, but it didn't happen. So I got my train again, like empty platform, just everything about it, you know, sort of the platform is kind of a bit overgrown with moss and weeds. It just feels like somewhere that time is forgotten, you know.
A lot of wind. I've got some really good video, because again, we're right on the coast, you know, and I've got some great videos of the wind just whipping through the top of these really tall palm trees, and it just gives you that.
Sorry, did you just say you've got some very good videos of wind? Is that I'm just checking, because
hey, listen,
I mean
nature,
that's going to come back.
Look, listen, I enjoy a good,
much like wind.
I enjoy a good moment in nature, and this was a special one. I was looking at the palm trees, I was enjoying the wind whipping through them, and I got some good videos. Don't poo-poo it.
Well, look, we'll maybe do a separate post. Just if anyone who's listening that is a particular fan of wind and wants to see those videos, we'll get those separated out from the main pack of images, and we can share those, or possibly just contact James directly if you want those wind videos.
You're gonna be jealous when you see this one. Okay, it's amazing. I stand by it.
Well, look, once again, you know, this trip, about 45 minutes or so north of Miyazaki City, just uncovered two incredible places, and I'm thrilled that not only I got to see them, but you got to see them as well. And I just hope that people don't go back and listen too carefully to episodes 45 and 46 and find that you're saying completely different things to what you said then, because, you know, you are given to exaggeration and hyperbole. But what we're going to do is we're going to park it there, I think, and we are going to pick up the rest of this Miyazaki trip in episode 73, where we'll go to probably... Well, I know you'd been to this one also, and it's probably certainly in my top 10, just in terms of style, the things that you kind of uncover in the place, the owner, and the fact that they probably have one of the best T-shirts that I've seen and indeed bought in any Jazz Kisan. I know that's a bit of a sore point, but we'll try not to trigger you too much in the next episode. So, in the meantime, keep listening, please. Keep sharing our content. If you see something you like online, share it with someone you think might like it. Also, if you want to see more images, TokyoJazzJoints.com. And of course, most of the stuff that we share and anything that's coming up, including new episodes of the podcast, you can find on at Tokyo Jazz Joints on Instagram. James, I'll let you get back to your wind videos, and I might go and watch some ones of rain or snow, and then we'll pick it up in episode 73 and finish off with Miyazaki. How's that sound?
I stand by my appreciation of the 5 natural elements. You left Japan, you've lost your ability to communicate with nature, like the ancient Japanese Shinto priests. So, yes, my friend, we will talk some jazz again soon. Have a good one.
Okay, we look forward to the haiku, and we'll talk in the next episode.
Take it easy, man. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.